The Athene Real Talk Podcast explores controversial ideas to stimulate debate and active thinking. These ideas do not always reflect Athene's personal views. Welcome to the Athene Real Talk Podcast.
He has been called the best gamer in the world, hands down.
World-famous gamer and philanthropist Athene.
Gaming for Good, it's called, has raised more than $20 million.
Using his notoriety to raise money for charity.
On activism, science, culture, and self-development.
Proud to have him in the studio today. I would not want to take you on in a video game.
I wanted to talk to you guys about a way that maybe allows you guys to make sense. And this is something that could also help the people inside here in this environment. What I actually started realizing is nobody actually makes sense as their core value in here. No one. I actually had a long talk with Reese about it. Because the thing is, if logic is what you value the most on a fundamental level, you automatically start questioning everything. Because you want to see logic in everything. You want to understand. And the thing is, I explained to him, it's like for me, it's like really what defines my world. It's logic. It's just like someone that believes in God. For me, it's logic. And Reese said, this is actually something that could help people to understand what you mean. If making sense was a religion, then logic would be your God. So if you look at someone that is religious, right, and he gets all his security and safety and all his self-confidence from believing in a religion, in God or whatever, or in Jesus, out of nowhere. Sometimes people that just have an enlightenment and they see God and they suddenly become a different person because on a subconscious level they value God, they trust Jesus, they love Jesus, and it's very conforming. It's just very conforming to know that there is an all-knowing power that takes care of everything, that has figured everything out, and for everything is a reason. The thing is, religion is flawed. Obviously, it's a fairy tale. The difference with logic is it's the exact same thing, except it's not a fairy tale. It does explain everything has a reason. It gives you safety. It is something you can love. It is something that brings everything about. And it allows you to trust it. It solves all your problems. It allows you to move more forward. And the thing is, if you would believe in logic as people believe in God, or believe in logic as people believe in Jesus, just religiously, to give you guys a little of how it works for me, I just believe in logic blindly. I blindly believe in logic. I think everything has to be logical. I'm emotionally attached to logic. On a fundamental level, it's my religion. So everything I see in the world, I try to understand instead of through the means of God, through the means of logic. I also submit myself to logic. Logic is my all-powerful Lord. Whenever there is something, if logic tells me different, I have to follow it. It's like believing in God. If God tells you hey, you gotta do this, you gotta do that, you're just gonna do it. You're not gonna question. I don't question logic. I just accept it. So for people here that are watching, if you would believe in logic on a fundamental level, religiously, and you trust it on an emotional level, you subconsciously adopt it and it would automatically bring about questioning everything. Don't know how many people it helps, but maybe this is a shortcut. Casper says, but who defines what's logic? Well, logic is basically a tool on how you go about knowledge, how you have knowledge and you build deduction, you deduce conclusions. So it's not who defines logic? Logic is just using logical thought processes. Logic is very easy. You can just look it up what it is. So who can here actually identify with believing in logic religiously and really trusting it on an emotional level? Basically, you just throw yourself at it. You just submit yourself to it. Nobody does that. That's what I do day in, day out. I submit myself to logic. If logic tells me something, I cannot deny it. I gotta follow it. I gotta accept it. And applying logic to your knowledge, that's making sense, which is also logical to know that you don't know everything. So if your conclusions are too much away from your current way of thinking, you always have to give yourself some room. Casta says, I thought we should think for ourselves. Yeah, you have to think for yourself. That's the first thing you start doing if you value logic. If logic is your God, the first thing you start doing is think everything through. You want to understand everything through logic. That's what thinking for yourself is. That's what critical thinking is. It's using logic. Burning says, how do you know you're not being logical if you have two contradictory ideas? Yeah, if you experience inner conflict. The truth can be non-logical. The truth is only non-logical if you don't understand it. And there is no such a thing as right and wrong and truth and non-truth. It's all relative anyway. Baitum Tularon, so it's logical to believe we were all created from the Big Bang. Looking at all the evidence we have, yes, it is logical to think that. Are we certain? No, because it's logical to not be certain. Logic is applied on the current knowledge you have. That's why I like to talk about making sense, but religiously believing in making sense, it's too hard for people to wrap their head around. That's why if I reframe it in different words, if you'd believe in God, logic would be your God. It explains everything, but you need to have the knowledge to do so. Jet Zerebush says, all this making sense logic bullshit means that you need to do everything that is most efficient with your current knowledge. If you lack the knowledge, you need to improve it. Don't understand it so simple. No, it's not that simple. It's about what you value on a subconscious level, emotionally. You are driven emotionally. Everything you do is driven emotionally. And it's about changing the drive on a subconscious level from comfort or whatever to logic or making sense. It's about believing in making sense, trusting it, loving it, embracing it. So it means to find truth. No, I don't try to find truth because I know there is no such a thing as absolutes. The conclusion is relative, but the logic you use is quite universal. You can say like, yeah, you can use flawed logic, yeah. You know, you apply logic to solve an equation. If you are a bad student, you will make a mistake. If you're a good student, you will come to the same conclusion as someone else that's trying to solve the same equation because they use logic on it. So if you have flawed knowledge, you will have a flawed result. You can never know whether your knowledge is absolute truth. So logic can never be, flawless, but it can give you high likelihood of things being accurate or not. Cabot says, hey Athene, isn't 1 + 1 2 100% true? No, it's not. It's only 100% true if you accept certain rules. And within these rules, you could say 1 + 1 is 2, 100% true within these rules. If these rules are 100% true, then 1 + 1 = 2 is 100% true. T's Game says, if there is no truth, it wouldn't matter, does it? Yes, of course it matters, because it's not about whether things are absolutely true or not, it's about what is more likely. And the funny thing is, the reason why you're trying to find absolutes is because you're insecure. You didn't accept and embrace uncertainty and that everything is probabilistic. The moment you do that, you don't chase truths anymore. You don't even care about that. You just think practically and see what is most beneficial, what is most likely. That's all. You're just stuck in the idea of like thinking in truths and falses, but that's not how it works. It's not how the world works. Everything is relative. Dradini says, can you please explain what the difference is between making sense and enlightenment? I don't like enlightenment because it's a word that is not definable as much as making sense. I will tell you guys something. The more balance and fulfillment you experience, the more your core emotional drive will feel that it's in line with itself. What I have been doing here in this group is basically I've been creating all the perfect requirements for people, even with different core values, to still be able to feel great. But people never really changed in the core. And me providing all the structure and logical foundation took away the need to actually really question that core value. What if I told you guys that the people that are the furthest gone and experience the most pain, that you can go through a simple process that would change your life completely, instantaneously, and solve all your problems? Would you think that is possible? Because I found it. I found the way to change someone instantly. And I'll give you guys a little story about my own life. When I grew up, I was always wondering why people behaved so irrational. I never really understood it. When I tried to make a difference in the world and I went to political meetings, to activist groups, I never really understood why people didn't make any sense. Then when I met Reese and Ian and Dean, whenever they had problems that didn't make any sense, I always explained them, but like, it's because you don't value logic. It's because you don't value logic. Even though deep inside I always knew that on a fundamental level, I am not so different than other people, I knew that I was thinking on a different way. Basically, these making sense talks, I've already been talking about it for 16 years. I always try to convert my belief in logic to others, but it never worked. And I also knew that if it does happen, it's quite instantaneous. It's not a process you have to go through. But since it never happened, I mean, I'm a very scientific person. I didn't really try so much. I just tried to, patch stuff up. And that's what I actually do. That's what I did with Reese after the breakup. What I did with Reese was I patched him up all the time. Whenever he had dissonance, I injected logic to cure it all the time. And as a result, since he kept feeling good, he allowed himself to, keep his core value, which is more hedonistic, because he was feeling great, because everything I was doing was working out. I was making a lot of money, I was having great success, and that's easy. It's easy to be on the winning team, basically. And then as a next step, we started scaling up. We started growing this environment here. And the same thing applied here. I started creating structure, certain simple rules to make sure people, navigate properly so they feel, fulfilled and grow. But I always knew that people were thinking differently and people's calibration was different. I always knew it. My entire life was a compromise, to the extent where I just try really desperately to get people to see the light. And 5 days ago, Katarina made a very big paradigm shift where she valued, instead of safety, logic. I'm going to keep it very simple, by the way. I'm not going to go too much in depth. But basically, it caused an avalanche of different thoughts and low self-esteem gone, identity issues gone. It was literally like a shift from one moment to another, which I predicted that would happen if people on a fundamental level direct themselves towards logic rather than through whatever core value they have. First, I was a bit skeptical, but then when I started realizing, wait a minute, this is actually working, I had a proof of concept. And what is a proof of concept? A proof of concept means you have a certain theory and you try to test it, and at a certain point, it gives the results that you predicted. So after 3 days, I talked to Reese about it, because I always knew that Reese was not here for the right reasons. Nobody here is for the right reasons. They're not here because they make sense. They're here because on a certain level, I provide them with a logical structure that allows them to feel more comfortable with what they value the most. So I had a talk with Reese, a very confrontational one as well, and I explained him that. And at first he didn't really get it. Then I explained him. I really went in depth. And I gave the example of religion, and he managed to click into it. What basically happens, it's almost like an awakening. Like, honestly, it is an awakening, basically. But to me, like, that's still not enough, because Katarina has a strong emotional connection to this place. Reese has a very strong emotional connection to me. Still not scalable. I talked to Ricardo and Nolan about it as well afterwards. They didn't really make, the jump. But then I talked to someone else. Tim came from Sweden. He came over here for 3 days ago, and I felt like this guy's gonna go back home. He's here for validation-seeking reasons, low self-esteem. He's far gone. So basically, I talked to him earlier today, and we mentioned, I was also here with Reason, and we explained, how on a fundamental level, you have to value logic. You have to submit to logic. You have to blindly follow logic. It's literally like a religion. You just have to believe it. And we explained also very clearly, how logic is what brings everything. It brings love. It brings everything. Everything that succeeds or whatever, it's what it gives. So he was a bit shaken up. He went to his room, and he came back as a different person. He was reborn. And you might wonder, man, why are you using these words? Because that's how powerful it is. He was euphoric, and he finally got it. From one moment to another, his entire paradigm got switched. He felt a lot more secure, no identity issues anymore. Everything was fixed instantly. But basically, people that have the biggest void, if you have the ability to imagine that you would believe in God and how religion can be satisfying, logic is way more powerful. Just like you believe in God, you can believe in logic. You have to submit and follow it blindly. And it might sound a little bit but that's fanatic, that's extremist. But we're talking about logic. Logic is what brings about reality. Can you be an extremist about reality? Extremism requires you to fundamentally believe in something and not allow any kind of adaptation whatsoever. But logic is exactly what provides you to mold yourself. If you truly embrace on a fundamental level, and that requires you to go really to the core of what drives you. And he was here telling, after he made the click, he said, I was not here to make a difference. I was here because I wanted to feel better about myself. I came here because I didn't feel safe enough. And he started realizing that logic is exactly what provides all of that. And when you start believing in logic and submit yourself, you don't want to go back because you feel euphoric. You feel set free. And of course it requires you to find logical answers for meaning and such, but the Real Talk has provided that. The Real Talk has literally provided the entire structure. If you feel lonely, if you feel low secure or whatever, logic can provide all of that. And what he also said was, just like God giving it human characteristics, it helped him to give logic human characteristics, in a sense, to emotionally more submit to it. It's like a friend you have that is logic. You can always count on him. And he said he went back to when he was younger, and he said when he was 8 to 16, he was always being bullied and stuff and pushed away. And his way of coping with it was either crawling into a corner and being comfortable with his distractions, or getting validation to feel good about himself. And that is literally what is omnipresent in the chat. But the thing is, you are on a fundamental level not only lying to yourself, you're missing out on being able to feel so much better about yourself. If you completely submit and value logic on a fundamental level, you can awaken instantly. But you need to understand and really go and ask the questions and go to the bottom. The people that are the furthest gone in the chat are the ones that can make the bridge the most, but you have to submit to logic. It's that simple. Okay, you explained that, God. Should I explain it? Nobody even responded. Man.
Nobody responded? What the fuck?
No.
Man, it's been sitting in my mind. It's been doing a lot. It's very interesting. Because, it also started clicking with me for other reasons. A big, heavy reason that really started pushing me, saying, I must, is because it is morally imperative.
What is morally imperative?
It would be immoral not to.
But the thing is, even if it's immoral, what is moral and immoral is logically defined.
Yeah, and I care enough already about logic when it comes to morals. You know, when I think about morals, obviously I think about them logically. I'm not a religious person who thinks about morals religiously. But the thought to me, and of course it's for every person differently, but the thought that my beliefs are basically immoral does quite a bit.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, then your core value is to be moral, right? Because logic is what brings about morality.
Yeah. But I care enough about the logic already for me to experience that as dissonance.
Okay.
It's like, it is immoral. Like, it is irresponsible. And I also realized something more that I wanted to tell you, which is, like, I really do think, though, but yeah, maybe we're wrong and maybe nobody gets this shit. But I feel, and I'll explain it to people in my words as well, right? But I feel like the reason why this could be very powerful is because people will disagree with this easily because it's difficult to put into the right words. But a lot of people would love to be religious if it made sense. But it's too flawed. It just looks too crazy, right?
People with low self-esteem would love to believe in God.
Right.
Yeah, people with high self-esteem.
But if you grow up with too much rational influence, you can't. If you grow up too scientifically thinking, you can't. But you'd love to. It's goddamn appealing. It's strong because you walk with God, right? You are backed up by God. You are untouchable. But logic can do this. There is something you could trust in as much as a religious person.
More than God.
A religious person can trust fully in God, but he'll run into trouble often. He'll run into trouble because if he runs into an atheist or into information that says like, yo, there's something up though, that person will be like, no, please. Like, you don't want to hear that information. But man, you can do it with logic, like, because when you look at religious people, real religious people, like really truly devoted religious people, devout religious people, they have a superpower. Their commitment unlocks things that people who don't believe don't have.
Yeah, Mormons have it. It's insane. They go door to door
because
non-stop.
Mormons are very devout, right? They tend to have it. But you can unlock this without being religious. The mechanism that religion exploits in your brain that unlocks these things, that mechanism, the best component for it is not religion. The best component for it is logic. So you can actually have that kind of belief, that kind of devout belief that makes you untouchable with logic. In a way, it's quite baffling how similar it is because there are interesting similarities. You can even say things like logic is your creator.
But the thing is, like, people believe in identity. A lot of people believe in identity, right? Instead of God. In individualistic society.
Yeah.
Their paradigm is, I believe in my individual, right? Then you have people that believe in God. It's also a flawed self-image. Like, if your self-image is built on submitting to logic, it's automatically going to align itself with your true self. While if your self-image is in line with believing in God or your identity of this is me or whatever, that's where the flaw is. So basically, people have to replace the belief in identity into the belief in logic.
I mean, isn't it super appealing that there is a true religion? It's fucking logic. There is an actual true religion. There's a non-flawed, like, if you want to call it a religion.
But it's so fucking problematic. I can really tell them, whenever you have a bridge between knowledge and awareness and you need to implement it through experience, if logic is your core value, the moment you understand it, it automatically becomes your part of your awareness. It's insane. You can grow exponentially faster. Your awareness goes up like insane. People don't get that. I explain that it's just information. They don't get it. It's like if you value comfort and you really get confronted with something that really is comfortable, you immediately embrace it.
Cyril says he gets it.
Well, they won't apply.
There are
if they get it, we get the applications.
Yeah. Send in your application already.
Luminous says, logic is not an entity, therefore it cannot be a god. Logic is a systematic way of thinking. Done. That's BS, what you're saying. Like, the way you're building your logic is completely flawed.
Luminous, more like ludicrous.
Yeah, man. And you might say, like, but what is your definition? Like, if God was completely logic, pure logic, it's just a manifestation of logic. Maybe, you could even imagine, like, because God is just something people cannot wrap their head around, right? Imagine if God was pure logicness. That's it. Damn. And in order to go to heaven, you have to follow logic perfectly. Perfectly possible, right?
Damn.
I don't even know where you go, like, God is an entity, logic is not an entity. Like, get the fuck out of here. It's just a way of life. Logic is a way of life.
You can even say that.
Yeah, here. So, having emotional connection and trust in it as if it was a God.
Big Phil. Yes.
That's what it is. You believe in it as if it was God. The trust and the emotional connection to God, you have it with logic. Yep. Easy. That's what you do, Big Phil. You submit yourself to logic. You go like, okay, I embrace it. And the first thing you will start doing is, with God, it's the opposite. You just think everything is solved. With logic, it's like, oh, but this doesn't make sense. This is not logical. Why? I gotta find why it's logical. And you just start strengthening yourself by seeing the logic in everything. And you grow exponentially.
Right.
And that's what critical thinking is. It's applying logic.
With religion, you gotta follow like the 10 Commandments or whatever.
Yes.
With logic, you gotta figure them out. You gotta figure out what are reality's commandments. How
Yes.
does it work? When
Yes.
you don't understand something, you gotta investigate. You
Yes.
gotta critical think and try to understand.
It's like reading the Bible. Instead of reading the Bible, you're
reading reality.
You're reading reality, you're skeptical. And if you misinterpret something, you try again, just like scientists do. It's not absolute. Truths are absolute, right?
Yeah, because that would be illogical.
Yes. It's illogical to have something as truth. Can't think in absolutes. You're better off, more likely, with logic.
Subscribe to youtube.com/AtheneWins. Watch the live stream at twitch.tv/AtheneLive and follow The Real Athene on Snapchat.